Okay, so are you ready to dive in? Because today we're tackling this idea of like taking control of your own life.
Yeah, let's do it.
But here's the twist. We're getting our cues from like Moses,
Okay.
Moses's farewell speech.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you'd think a guy about to like lead his people into the promised land would be all about follow me,
Right.
right?
All right.
This is like the ultimate pep talk moment.
Yeah, follow the leader, right?
Exactly.
The ultimate influencer.
But Moses throws a curveball.
Oh, really? How so?
Instead of, follow me to success, it's more like you've got this within yourselves.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like this unexpected emphasis on self-reliance, which I kind of love.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, don't just stand around and like admire the burning bush. You have to go and like build your own fire.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is a pretty bold move when you think about it.
It is bold.
Like, how often do you hear leaders say, don't rely on me, figure it out yourself?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And it kind of makes you wonder, is that like realistic? Can everyone really be their own leader?
That's a really good question.
Or is that just like setting people up to fail?
Yeah, are we all capable of that level of like self-direction?
Right.
And that's where this article gets super fascinating because it doesn't just stop at Moses.
Okay.
It brings in some heavy hitters to back up his claims.
Like, who are we talking about here?
We're talking Wittgenstein, we're talking Nietzsche, even a Hasidic master.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're going deep.
Yeah, all these different perspectives, all emphasizing this idea of self-empowerment.
Okay, so it's not just some ancient pep talk.
Yeah.
There's like serious philosophical weight behind this idea.
Exactly.
Okay, so what do these big thinkers actually add to Moses' message? Like, how do their ideas connect?
Well, like Nietzsche, for example.
Or
He talks about this will to power as this inherent drive within each of us.
Okay.
And it's not about like dominating others. It's about mastering ourselves.
Okay.
Overcoming obstacles to reach our full potential.
Right, like that really resonates with that whole build your own ladder
Yeah.
kind of message we're getting from Moses.
Exactly.
So what about the Hasidic perspective? That feels like a whole other realm.
Yeah, it's a totally different ballgame, right?
Like, how does that fit in?
So Hasidism, it's this mystical tradition, right?
Right.
But within it, there's this concept of the intermediate person.
An intermediate person.
Yeah, and it's not about like settling for mediocrity or anything.
Right.
It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
The article explains that being intermediate means recognizing that like we're all works in progress. We're
Exactly.
all constantly striving to bridge this gap between who we are now and like who we aspire to be.
So instead of aiming for some like unattainable ideal, it's more about embracing this journey of continuous self-improvement.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
It takes the pressure off needing to have it all figured out right now.
Totally. Yeah. It's like giving ourselves permission to not be perfect.
Right. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
And it makes me think about leadership too,
Okay. Yeah.
because we often put leaders on these pedestals.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Like they're supposed to be superhuman.
Exactly. And we expect them to be infallible.
Have all the answers. Right.
But maybe true leadership, the kind Moses embodied and that this article is getting at, is more about empowering others to find that same drive within themselves
Yeah, I love that idea.
instead of just blindly following.
Right. It's about fostering that self-reliance that Moses was talking about.
Exactly.
Empowering people to build their own ladders.
But how do we actually do that? It's one thing to talk about self-reliance and building ladders,
Right.
but putting it into practice in the real world, that's the real challenge.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're all about, embracing our intermediate, right?
Yeah.
And building those ladders to success.
Absolutely.
But isn't there like a danger in this whole self-reliance thing? Like, what about guidance mentorship? Even just some support along the way.
Right. Yeah.
Are we supposed to go it alone?
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
And it gets at like a common misunderstanding of self-reliance.
Okay.
It's not about becoming a lone wolf,
Yeah.
rejecting all external input.
Okay.
Think about Moses himself.
Okay.
He had mentors. He relied on his brother Aaron.
Right.
He received guidance from, well, a higher power.
Right. Of course. Yeah. He had that burning bush hotline.
Exactly.
Okay. So how do we reconcile this need for guidance with this whole be your own leader idea?
The article uses this really helpful analogy of a map and a compass.
Okay. I like where this is going.
So imagine you're setting out on a journey, right?
Okay.
A map can show you the terrain, potential routes, landmarks to aim for.
Okay.
That's kind of like the guidance we get from others, valuable for sure,
Right.
but it's not the whole story.
Okay. I'm intrigued. So where does the compass fit into all of this?
The compass represents your internal sense of direction,
Okay.
your values, your own personal definition of success.
So mentors, teachers, they can give us these maps, right?
Exactly.
Different perspectives on the journey, but ultimately,
It's our own internal compass that guides us.
I like that.
It's about trusting that inner voice.
Yeah. Having the map, but also trusting your gut.
Exactly.
Okay, but what happens when those two things like conflict?
That's interesting.
Well, what if the guidance we're getting doesn't match up with our own goals or values?
That's where the real work of being your own leader begins.
Okay.
Remember that concept of the intermediate person?
Yeah, always striving.
Always striving.
Right.
It's about being discerning, taking in information, but also having the courage to trust your gut, to forge your own path, even if it looks different from what everyone else is doing.
That makes sense. But it's definitely easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely.
It takes guts to go against the grain,
It does.
to trust your own judgment when everybody else is telling you to do something different.
It's hard.
So where does that kind of confidence come from?
Well, the article suggests that it's cultivated through action,
Go.
through those small daily choices to work and believe, as the author puts it.
So it's about taking ownership,
Yes.
not just of our successes, but also our mistakes.
Exactly.
And using those experiences to refine that inner compass.
It's a process of constant learning and adjustment.
So it's less about having all the answers right away
Yeah.
and more about being willing to experiment, to learn as we go,
Exactly.
and to course correct when we need to.
Which honestly takes a lot of pressure off.
It really does, yeah.
Because none of us are perfect. We're all figuring it out as we go.
Exactly, and that's okay.
Exactly.
It's like giving ourselves permission to not have it all figured out.
And to grow from those experiences.
Okay, so this kind of reminds me of something we talked about earlier.
Okay, what's that?
Boris Schatz, the artist and visionary.
Oh, right, the utopian novel.
Exactly.
During World War I.
Yeah, talk about finding opportunity in the midst of chaos.
Right.
But how does that connect to this whole idea of building our own ladders, trusting our internal compass?
Well, Schatz wasn't just dreaming up a perfect future.
Yeah.
He was actively working towards it.
In what way?
He founded the Bazell Academy, trained a whole generation of artists.
Wow.
He helped shape the cultural landscape of Jerusalem.
So he was literally building something tangible
Exactly.
based on his vision,
Yes.
his own personal promised land, so to speak.
He didn't wait for someone else to create it for him.
He saw what was missing and took action.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty inspiring.
It is.
And it really drives home this point that it's not enough to just have a vision, right?
Right.
We have to pair that internal compass with action.
Exactly.
And that's where things start to get really interesting. Okay, so we've got the vision, we're ready to act.
Right, we're fired up.
Yeah, but like, how do we actually make it happen?
Right.
Because founding art academies during wartime, that's
Not exactly.
not exactly a Tuesday,
Everyday stuff.
Yeah, what does this like building our own ladders thing look like for the rest of us?
Well, the article reminds us that it doesn't have to be these huge grand gestures,
Okay.
Remember that line from Moses' speech?
Go for it.
It is not in heaven, nor is it beyond the sea.
Okay.
It is very close to you in your mouth and in your heart to observe it.
So he's saying like the power to change things isn't out there somewhere, it's within reach.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's about taking that inner wisdom, that internal compass, and turning it into something real.
Okay, so how do we actually do that?
It starts with asking yourself some questions.
Like good.
What are you passionate about?
Okay.
What kind of impact do you want to make on the world?
So like defining our own personal Jerusalem,
Exactly.
our own version of the promised land.
Right. And not waiting for someone to hand it to us.
Yeah, we're creating it ourselves.
We're building it step by step.
Okay, I'm with you.
And once you have that vision, then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what small tangible actions can I take right now, today, this week, to move closer to that?
I love to break it down into manageable steps.
Exactly.
Instead of like, I want to change the world, it's, I'm going to volunteer for an hour.
There you go.
Something concrete.
And maybe next week, you research other organizations or you tell a friend about your experience.
Right. It creates this ripple effect.
Exactly.
Each step builds on the last one.
Momentum.
Yeah.
And remember, we talked about it. We're all intermediate, right?
Right. Always a work in progress.
There will be missteps, wrong turns, ladders that lead nowhere.
It's all part of the process.
Embrace the detours.
Yeah, because even those detours can teach us something.
Exactly.
It's about being open to learning, adjusting our course along the way,
Trusting the journey.
and trusting that we'll end up exactly where we're supposed to be.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's a great place to wrap up for today.
I agree.
This whole idea that leadership isn't about having all the answers.
It's a process.
It's about embracing that intermediate mindset,
Absolutely.
being open to growth, to learning from our experiences, and to building our own ladders to success, whatever that looks like for each of us.
Beautifully said.